So they have sentenced Jussie Smollett, have they? Looks like they've sentenced him to, I think it's 5 months in jail and about 2.5 years probation. It's really such a sad, tragic story because, I mean, here you got a guy who is genuinely intelligent. I've seen him in interviews. He's a really smart guy, personable, seemingly high class. He's highly talented, singer, songwriter, dancer, even actor, of course. I'll admit I didn't know about him really, kind of, because I actually remember watching that TV show, that short-lived sitcom that he and his family members were on back in the 90s, in the mid-90s, like 94 or so, called On Our Own, where he and his siblings played a bunch of siblings. Long story. Google it if you don't want if you want to know more about it. But I didn't know who he individually was back then. I knew about his older sister, Jussie Smollett, when she was in The Great Debaters and so on back in the 2000s. It was when he was on Empire that he himself, as an individual artist and actor, really got to shine. And he was talented enough that I remember thinking, why is he only playing a successful singer-songwriter on TV? He should be one in real life, quite apart from the acting. Plus, it didn't hurt that, in addition to the fact that Empire was one of my favorite new TV shows of the past decade, if not my very favorite one, on top of that, his character, Jamal Lyon, was my favorite character. He was the smart and sensible one, and moral one. Unlike the eldest son, Andre, who was a little bit evil, kind of like his father, and unlike the youngest one, Hakeem, who was the dumb lion. Anyway, long story. In fact, I actually just finished binge watching the whole series recently, and then lo and behold, right after I finished binge watching it, they sentenced Jussie. What are you going to do? I just got finished thinking to myself, what a waste of talent that this guy had to blow up his whole career like this. And the hell of it is, in American society, man, you can screw up even that badly, sometimes worse, as long as you apologize, admit you were wrong, admit you lied, admit you screwed up, whatever, apologize, beg for forgiveness, people will give you a second chance. But he had to double down and bring his whole family, drag them down into his mess to the point where they're still defending him now to this very day. It's just really, really, really tragic. And now he's going to spend, ostensibly 5 months in prison, in jail. I don't know how long, whether it'll actually last that long. Hopefully not. Personally, I think this is excessive. I don't know that it really needs to go that far. I could see maybe subjecting him to a month or two in jail. 5 months. But then I see other people saying that this is about right given what he did. I don't know. I asked a friend of mine, someone whom I respect, for his take on it, and I thought he had a legit response. He said, and let me see now, I think he's saying something to the effect that, he should just have to pay the fine. And, he says jail sentences for making fake police reports are very rare in cases where no other crime was committed. And a jail sentence comes off as singling him out for special punishment because of the highly publicized, politically charged nature of the case. They interviewed a former Cook County prosecutor turned defense attorney a while ago, and this guy said he'd be shocked if Smollett did any jail time based on how rare that is for cases of this nature. I think that's basically true. This sentence, I'm not crazy about it. I don't know that he really needs to do jail time. And if so, then they really ought to keep it to a minimum, probably less of a minimum than this. While it's true that he has damaged the credibility of genuine survivors and many non-survivors of real hate crimes out there, at the same time, I don't know that the right way to punish that is with jail time. You could make a case, and I think I more or less buy into this case, that the reputational damage is punishment enough. With that said, though, I'll also say this. I'm hearing since the verdict, really since the story unraveled several years ago, I have been hearing people like John McWhorter, professor at Columbia University, talk about how the Jussie Smollett case really shows how victim culture has taken way too much hold in American society. And it's gotten to a point now where people actually value being victims to the point where they're willing to make up victimhood in order to try to get some shine off of it. And I just want to point out, though, that while there's some truth to that, maybe even a lot of truth to it, that is not by any means something that people on the political left or who belong to communities that the left considers marginalized, they don't have a monopoly on that phenomenon. You know how I know? Because there was a similar a similar incident at my alma mater, Princeton, my last year when I was a senior. This guy, I think he was a junior at the time, named Francisco Nava, a conservative student from Texas, socially conservative, mind you, who was a member of the Anscombe Society, a socially conservative student group on campus. It was basically designed to create a safe space of sorts. In the language of a slightly later era, it was designed to create a safe space for socially conservative students on campus who felt alienated from the campus cultural and political mainstream. And it was just, it was something else because this guy, I think he was a practicing Mormon too. Basically, in a nutshell, he reported to the police that he'd been attacked in the town of Princeton, off campus, by some people who supposedly accosted him and beat the crap out of him, allegedly, because of his political views. Supposedly, they told him, you've chosen the wrong cause. And he ended up in the hospital for part of the weekend. And when he got out of the hospital, he went to stay at the home of Robert George, the most prominent conservative professor at Princeton, with whom I took a course during my sophomore year. And supposedly while he was staying there that weekend, some muckrakers at the Ivy League blog found out that this kid, Francisco Nava, had actually made up a fabricated story about a hate crime against him while he was in boarding school in high school. And he had written some homophobic messages against himself on the message board outside of his dorm room. And when the school found out about it, they disciplined him, but not too harshly. He was still able to get into Princeton. They knew about it. I think they required him to undergo some kind of therapy. I think that was part of the story. But anyway, he went to Princeton and then pulled a similar stunt there. Only worse this time, because when this story came out on the blogs and started being reported in the media and so on, the professor approached him apparently and said, people are saying that you fabricated a similar story while you were in high school. Is that what happened in this case? And if so, you need to come clean about it now. And apparently he confessed to the professor and later to the police. And it was reported in nationwide media, the New York Times and elsewhere. And it was just, it was crazy because the story that I remember hearing at the time was that he had actually gone into an alleyway in the town late at night, headbutted a wall, broken a bottle of Orangina over his head because apparently Mormons drink Orangina because it has no caffeine. I don't know. That was the story anyway, just the narrative. And then went to the hospital or whatever, called 911 or whatever, and claimed that he had been attacked. So, this is just to say that insofar as it's true that victim culture is a thing, a serious phenomenon and a serious problem in society, I feel like nowadays with the political polarization that's set in particular in American society, but not only there either, there's a tendency on the part of a lot of the people who are most likely to complain about victim culture that to assume that it's mainly a phenomenon that occurs on the left. Don't be fooled. There's no reason why only folks on the left would exhibit that tendency. And I was about to say I've seen it up close and personal, but I didn't see it up close and personal. I only really heard about it, but it did happen at my alma mater while I was still going there. And boy, did that story make a splash at the time. So, I think that to the extent that people want to use this Jussie Smollett fiasco to try to score political points against their left-wing political opponents, keep in mind, they're not the only ones who sometimes feel the need to profit from the whole culture and concept of victimhood. And when it comes to Jussie himself, I've talked about this already, the implications of his case for the whole principle that we should always believe survivors and things of that nature. So I won't go into that now, but I will say this, if it really is entirely true that he made the whole thing up and fabricated the entire thing, to this day, I hesitate to go so far as to say that definitively just because I really can't say for sure that I know that firsthand. But I will say the story unraveled fairly quickly, fairly early on. And it's not like we've heard any evidence that's come out since then that has tended to support his original claim. So to see his family members, his siblings and so on, taking up for him outside the courthouse after the sentence was announced yesterday, I understand their loyalty to him on the grounds of family, blood is thicker than water, etc., etc. And they're in a difficult position because, if he is doubling down and sticking to his guns, they want to believe him. They're his siblings. They grew up with him, So I don't necessarily blame them, but at the same time, I might, if he really did make this up, Jussie, damn. Best thing you can do. It's arguably too late now, but really this is what you should have done 3 years ago. But I don't know, maybe better late than never. I mean, the longer you wait, the longer it'll take for you to bounce back from the whole thing. But still, even so, it may still be true that it's better late than never. Just admit that you made the whole thing up. Confess. Beg for forgiveness. Especially now, it'll take people a while to forgive you, but it just might work in the end, eventually. God bless. You are still an intelligent, talented guy. I for one have not lost sight of that. And like I said earlier, I'm not crazy about this sentence. I feel like it is excessive, if not necessarily that excessive. So, I can see legitimate grounds for disagreeing with the judge's decision in this case. But with that said, though, I do sincerely hope that you're able to salvage this, because I don't want to see all of that genuine talent that you have to offer the world go completely to waste.